All right, let's do part 2. And we're going to do Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 38.
Quick question. Is there any reason why we took a break from Genesis?
Because what's going on in the world right now?
I see. Okay.
I don't know.
Ezekiel 28?
38.
I can find Ezekiel now. Before or after?
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's after Genesis.
Did you say 28?
38.
Or Revelation?
38 and 39.
Later.
Yeah, it's between Genesis and Revelation part.
Is it before or after the Gospel?
All right, review of last week. Psalms 83. We talked about the Psalm 83 war. That war set the stage for the Gog and Magog war. Okay, both these wars, from what we talked about last week, are going to happen before the tribulation, the 7-year tribulation. All right. The war before Gog and Magog is an extension of the Gog and Magog is an extension of the Psalm 83 war. So it'd be kind of like World War I and World War II. Okay, like we had World War I and World War II, same type of thing, except the distance in between. Most don't believe it's going to be a long time in between.
They don't believe it?
Yeah, most people don't believe it's probably going to be pretty rapid conception, even though there could be time in between, but not like it probably was like in World War I, World War II. But that's kind of like the different, same thing. We had World War I, World War II, so let's kind of think of it like that, all right? So
you think that the Psalm 83 war will usher in the Gog and
yes,
Magog war?
there's no doubt. I firmly believe that. Okay, the difference between the wars is that Psalms 83 war was to wipe Israel off the map that we're seeing right now. That's what they're, okay, the Gog and Magog war, the main reason for that one we read into is because they want to plunder them for their stuff. Okay, so there's a big difference. We'll see some.
No, say that last.
Well, your Psalm 83 is because they want to wipe Israel off the map.
Right.
And Gog and Magog is mainly because they're going to go after the riches and what Israel has. Okay, so also Psalm 83 tells us who's in this, the pre-Gog and Magog. We looked at the differences. All right, Isaiah 17 described what will happen to Syria, Damascus, while Jeremiah tells us what will happen to Jordan and Damascus. We're going to review a little bit over that. That there's the different countries are not mentioned in Gog and Magog. Okay, we looked at their, because of the Psalm 83 war, and there will be destruction of Damascus that we see when we talked about, that the borders of Israel will expand again. Okay, almost to what God wanted when we saw the covenant in Genesis 15:18 that when we were studying. It'd almost be restored back to that. All right, that's what Ezekiel 25 tells us. That all right. It tells us that the war extends into Saudi Arabia actually. So which is 10. So right down in here, this part right here, when we read that right down in this area right here, see this is the expansion of it. This is part of Saudi Arabia during that war. It was called Teman and Dedan. Okay.
That's what they took over. Or they're going to take over.
Yeah, this is going to be part. The whole thing. You got Jordan, Ammon, all that, the West Banks. So this would be like the new. I just put down here like the new Israel that we see. All right. Okay. Also, we didn't talk about this last week. We need to look at this a little bit too. Both Isaiah and Jeremiah tells us how Egypt will react. Actually, part of Egypt, some cities will be part of that in there too. So we're going to look at the other nations react to this and how Egypt reacts to the Psalm 83 war. So if you're there, go to Isaiah 19. 16 and 17.
Mind if I read that?
Yeah, go ahead. 19, 16 through 17.
In that day, the Egyptians will be like women. They will shudder and the land of Judah will bring terror to the Egyptians. Everyone to whom Judah is mentioned will be terrified because of what the Lord Almighty is planning against them.
Also, go to Jeremiah 49. (23 through 26).
I got that.
Okay.
Pretty cool because now doing the Old Testament, I'm starting to know like where the books are.
You ready?
Uh-huh.
Concerning Damascus, Hamath and Arpad are dismayed, for they have heard bad news. They are disheartened, troubled like the restless sea. Damascus has become feeble. She has turned to flee, and panic has gripped her. Anguish and pain have seized her, pain like that of a woman in labor. Why has the city of renown not been abandoned, the town in which I delight? Surely her young men will fall in the streets. All the soldiers will be silenced in that day, declares the Lord Almighty. Want to keep going?
That's fine. So we see Egypt and the people in that area, because of what happened to Damascus, the fear that'll go on them, and then also in Jeremiah 49, 20, verses 20 through 21. You read that, right?
Verses
20 through 21. 49.
29,
20 through 21.
29, 20.
No,
Oh, 49.
49, 20 through 20. Same chapter.
I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Therefore, hear what the Lord has planned against Edom, what he has purposed against those who live in Teman. The young of the flock will be dragged away. He will completely destroy their pasture because of them. At the sound of their fall, the earth will tremble. Their cry will respond to the Red Sea. Resound, to the Red Sea.
Now look at the word which says that he has completely destroyed their pasture because of them. All at the sound of their fall, the earth will tremble. The word "tremble" there in the Hebrew means rash, which means to tremble in experience of a devastating earthquake. So that kind of gives you an idea, if you read that, what it's saying right there. When Damascus, this is what we're talking about, when Damascus is demolished, we see what Egypt's reaction is close by, okay? But this is the rest of the world. What is their reaction? It tells you at the sound of their fall, that tells me it's probably nuclear. So, here's something we've never had, okay? Isn't it very possible, why would it, that the rest of us might even feel this, whatever goes on? Okay, it's very possible. Sure. It could set off earthquakes. We don't know. You see what I'm talking about? Sure. Because that's what it means. Why would we tremble over here? The rest of the world be trembling what happened to Damascus. Why is that?
Wow.
See my point? So this is a very devastating beginning of what's going to go on in Gog and Magog. All right?
Now,
So.
do we necessarily know this is before the rapture?
There's no doubt about it, because we have to look at, when we look at Gog and Magog, okay, Gog and Magog is definitely before the rapture. We'll look at some of that before.
Gog and Magog is before the
Yeah, definitely before the rapture, And we've got to remember too, some people believe we don't know exactly when the rapture is going to happen. So we just know that some think that it might happen in between. In other words, after this war, people are raptured. But I'll tell you, before the tribulation happens, we'll be raptured. And I believe that Gog and Magog will happen before the tribulation. And the rapture doesn't set the tribulation. It's the peace treaty that sets the tribulation. Right. We can be raptured and still not be in the tribulation.
Right.
Okay? And we'll look at evidences when we get into why we look at that, all right? So, we see that all the borders expanded, and all that. So that's how it would be now. Now, remember, so these countries in the green at that particular time, okay, except for part of Iraq. Remember, Iran and Iraq too. Remember, we didn't see Iran in the Psalm 83 war. The reason why is that, if you look what's going on now, it's very possible that they've been knocked out. What I want to read to you out of that was actually when you're in Jeremiah 49, 34 through 38 says, this is what the word of the Lord that came to Jeremiah the prophet concerning Elam, which is Iran, early in the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. This is what the Lord Almighty says. See, I will break the bow Elam, the mainstay of their might. I will bring against Elam the four winds from four quarters of the heavens. I will scatter them to the four winds, and there will not be a nation where Elam exiles do not go. I will shatter Elam before their foes, before those who seek their lives. I will bring disaster upon them, even my fierce anger declares the war. So, whatever happens there, okay, whatever is happening at this point, whatever happens to Iran, they'll be scattered. There won't be a nation that's the same anymore. But yet, in Ezekiel, when we see, he refers them as being the Gog and Magog war. Because in Ezekiel, they're referred to as Persia, and here they're referred to as Elam. So what that's saying is that they were both contemporaries. Both Ezekiel and Jeremiah were contemporaries. That there was probably a division in the land. There was like a northern and southern Iran. Not like now, we think of Persia all one thing. Probably wasn't like that. So what it's saying that probably a big part of Iran, okay, was probably knocked out. So when we see Persia, see, they're not in the 83 war, so we see they probably got knocked out, their defense systems or whatever. And also, great devastation says that the people scatter. They go to other nations, okay? So we see that. So it's not going to, whatever happens is going to be something pretty fierce. It's not like what we're thinking, like they're going to knock out a couple little things. I don't believe that at all, okay? But obviously, they're still going to be part of the nation because we will see them coming against Israel and the Gog and Magog. But they're not listed here, all right? So that's important to kind of understand. All right. All right. So let's go to Ezekiel 38. Um, 1 through 6.
Can I read that?
Yep.
The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army. Your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Also Gomer, with all his troops, and Beth Togarmah, from the far north, with all his troops. The many nations with you. You said to what?
Would you go through 6?
6,
Okay. So that's good for right now. All right. So first thing we got to look at is some translations you always hear about Rosh. Everything. Some translations use the word. They'll say right there, "Son of man, set your face against Gog in the land of Magog and Rosh." Okay. The oldest translations don't say the word Rosh. That's where we get the word. It doesn't say that in ours. Okay. But a lot of translations say that. So you'll always hear about Rosh. The word chief in the Hebrew right there, the land of God, the chief prince of Gog, which is the chief means Rosh. So it means Rosh, prince of Meshech. So Rosh, all right. So that's what it means, because you're going to hear people talk about Rosh, all right?
Chief means Rosh.
So yeah, chief means prince or head of Rosh, all right? So Rosh.
Is Rosh spelled R-A-J?
Rosh is Russia, all right? So that's what the word Russia means, all right? It comes from Scythians. That's where people say, where does Russia come from? So the word Rosh, the chief head is Rosh, all right?
That's R-O-S-H.
Uh-huh. Some translations will say that, but from the oldest manuscripts, you don't see the word Rosh.
Okay.
You'll see in some of the newer translations Rosh, and it's just an interpretation from the word chief in the Hebrew. So it'd be like this: the word of the Lord came to me, "Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief," or Rosh, the prince of Meshech, okay, or Russia, the prince of. That's what it's kind of like saying. You kind of see what I'm talking about.
No, I'm sorry. So,
Okay, the word.
Is Meshech, is that Russia?
No, Rosh would be, and it's not on here. The chief would be. All right.
Now, where did you get that from?
Okay. One thing, because that word chief. Okay. One thing we got to understand. I'm going to go over to all this to you. All the names that you see here are listed in Genesis 10.
Okay.
These aren't just random names. Okay. We got to understand why does God use all these funny names of Tubal when you go through Ammon, and well, the reason why is because nation, we change the names of them all the time.
Right.
And so in order for people to always, so when let's say when Ezekiel was writing about it, it would be from the ancient people of these. That's why we know where it comes from.
I got you.
You kind of, so that's why the Bible always does it. We keep it Ammon, or these funny names like Teman,
Right.
Dedan.
Because those are the original names.
Those are the original names.
Okay, but my question is you said that Russia is Rosh?
Right.
Okay, where does it specify that?
The word right there, chief, right there. We're going to go over that right now.
So chief means Russia?
Right. It means Rosh. All right, which is we're gonna talk about that right now. All right. Okay, Magog was the son of Japheth. All right, one of the sons of Noah in Genesis 10:2. All right. Their descendants of Magog were called the Scythians. They lived in the North Black Sea, in the area part. That's part of Russia too. So okay, so what we have to understand, Magog, which would be Russia. Okay, part of Russia. Okay. Then you have the chief prince or the head, Rosh, is Russia or part of Turkey. All right, that's kind of how this all works. Okay, so you'll understand more of it when we get in, when you start reading when we're reading the text more. All right, and Meshach was another son of Japheth. It was a descendant that lived in Asia Minor, which is Turkey. Yeah, we see Turkey now. All right, and yeah, which later was pushed in the southeast of the Black Sea, borders Russia today. So all these, Russia's really involved in this. That's how we know these names. So Russia, when it's saying Rosh, the chief prince, we're referring to Rosh as the chief prince of this coalition. So Russia will be the chief prince of this coalition is what it's saying. That's going to be the main people, okay, that are involved in this. Meshach is another son of Japheth that says lived in Asia Minor. All right. Tubal was another son of Japheth, also Asia Minor, close to the Black Sea. All right. Then we'll see also in there Persia, which is Iran today. Cush, which is ancient Ethiopia. That's modern day Sudan. All right. You have Put, which is Libya, west of Egypt. You have Gomer, which is Gomer, and Togmar, which is Turkey. All right. Also, they say part of it could be Germany and some other things like that. Some people think, okay, a little bit in that. And then there's other. It says other names mentioned. Other nations are going to be in this. It just says other nations, so we don't know exactly what they are. There's other names we'll get into. There's other names: Sheba, Dedan, which is Saudi Arabia. And there's Tarshish, which could be the Mediterranean Sea around Spain and Italy, etc.
That'll be like Greece and all that stuff?
That'll be. We're going to look at those, okay? But they're not involved in the war. All right. So the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, which is Russia. Okay, the chief prince, the chief mean Rosh, that's the chief prince, Russia, okay, of Meshach, Tubal, prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshach. Now, he mentions Gog. This is very interesting, as if we already know who Gog is, that we don't see Gog anywhere in the Bible. Gog is a title of a leader, okay, this is very interesting, okay. Okay, so Gog is the leader of Rosh, Russia. Okay, it's a title of something like a president or a general. So we know Gog's that. There's only one mention of Gog, and another was a person in Chronicles. Okay, there's only other mention that we know in Gog, but that's not, we know by that. That's not the reference to who.
So Gog isn't an actual country. It's a
No, Gog is a title of a person, like someone who's leading them. So it'd be a title of someone who's leading. So Gog, see, the word of the Lord came to me, son of man, set your face against who? Gog. Okay, first Gog, that's the title of a person. Okay, of the land of Magog. See?
So he would
that makes sense.
set your face against the president of...
Right. Okay, but here's what gets kind of interesting. All right.
So there'll be another world dictator, is what there'll be.
Well,
like a Hitler type.
In First Chronicles 5:4, there was another guy was named Gog. All right, but there's no connection between that Gog. Okay, here's it gets really interesting. This gets kind of complicated, but I think I'm going to try to go over it. All right. We know it's definitely some kind of leader, but who is the leader, and why is he set against Gog? Okay, and when you read the text, he says set against, as if like we would know who the Gog is, right? Well, you have to go to Amos chapter 7, verse 1, but you can't really read it in our...
Amos.
Amos what?
7.
He's a minor, right?
Yeah,
Oh, there it is. Amos 7.
7:1.
Can I read that?
Yeah, go ahead and read it.
This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. He was preparing swarms of locusts after the king's share had been harvested, just as the second crop was coming up. How to do what?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Now, when you look at this, it's like, what is this talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about armies.
Okay, yeah, yeah, but who is this talking about? Okay, this is where it gets kind of complicated. The best translation out there, you gotta remember, when you take this right here, Amos, and a lot in the Hebrew, and transfers over to English, that's the translation you get. But 1,000 years before this, in this translation, actually it came from about 900 years AD is when most of these translations came from the Hebrew. But 1,000 years before that was the Septuagint, which Jesus even would quote out of. 300 years before Jesus was transferred from the Hebrew into the Greek language. Okay, if you read it in Septuagint, okay, which is probably one of your oldest of this text, okay, it would read. I'll read it to you. Says, "This is what the sovereign Lord showed me. He was preparing swarms of locusts after the king's share, and behold, one of the devastating locusts was Gog the king."
Where's that?
That's out of the Septuagint.
Oh.
Okay? Out of Gog the king. Now, so in the Septuagint, when it's transferred from the Hebrew into the Greek, there's a name of the king as Gog.
I'm sorry. What is this? What is the Septuagint?
Septuagint was the Greek. Okay, it was a. Okay, in
I'm sorry.
the old Hebrew language, when they went into captivity, the time they came into their speaking a language, they translated the Old Testament into the Greek language of that day, which is the Septuagint language.
So it's a very accurate.
It was a different kind of Greek, okay? A lot of people, when they went into captivity, a lot of the Jews didn't use Hebrew anymore.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? They didn't speak the original language anymore. And even during the time of Ezekiel, it was more Aramaic. It wasn't the Hebrew like you see in the law times. See what I'm talking about?
They translated into the common language of the day.
The common language of that particular day. And it was because they also had, you remember, when there was a Babylonian language, there was Aramaic language. See? So the people practiced, that's what they did. So the translation, what they call a Septuagint, Jesus himself quoted from the Septuagint. Okay, we know that. Very old, very accurate translation. Okay? Because sometimes you remember when we transfer things from that into our language, it doesn't come out clear.
Right.
Now right. So my point is, from our translation, even an older one, a Septuagint, that Greek, this is what it comes out to. Pretty interesting when you look at that. All right. Now another thing it says is that he has and behold, one of the devastating locusts was Gog the king. Okay. So Gog is the king of these locusts. All right. And then if you go to Proverbs 30:27.
Is this the Antichrist?
Well, that's what it kind of sounds like, but no.
Someone who seems
Precedes him.
yeah.
Remember, it's a title.
Right.
Proverbs
30:27.
I got it.
Okay.
When we start on 27?
This 27 is all you have to read.
Locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks.
See? Now, Proverbs tells you that locust has no kings. But we read in Hebrew and that there's a king.
Yeah.
Okay? So he's a king of what locust? So what do we have to do? We see something, we've all seen this very similar. Go to Revelation chapter 9.
The demons.
So is it also kind of saying like he's going to be the king of those who would accept no other king kind of thing?
Well, the point is what we're saying, God is going against, we're going to see God is going against Gog. He sets a war against Gog, this leader.
Well, that's yeah.
Okay? So who is the leader? You know what I'm talking about? Is this okay?
Revelation 1, I'm sorry.
Revelation 9.
Verse.
Oh, 9. Where'd it go? Let's see. Let's start from. Actually. Well, we kind of have to read kind of most of it. Start from verse 4. Ryan, read verse 4. let's see, go down to verse 8.
Okay. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were not given power to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months. And the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes a man. During those days they will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth.
Keep going. Go all the way through. Actually, go through 2:11.
Okay? They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing to battle. They had tails and stings like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek, Apollyon.
Okay. So what we're seeing here is that the first time mentioned of it in Amos, we see this king Gog. The next time we ever see him is here again in Ezekiel. And what do we see in Revelation 9? We see that there was some kind of demon in Hebrew, Abaddon and Apollyon. So the equivalent of this Gog is probably equivalent for like Michael the Archangel. So it's very possible, most people are believing that Gog, the leader of this coalition, will be a demonic, maybe the man's possessed, but it'd be like a general of Satan himself, some high rank demon himself, just like we see right here. Isn't that very interesting? Having the same kind of appearance. Okay, you'll also notice too, it talks when we keep reading on here, it calls them as hordes. Now the people, I'm not saying it's a demon war, but Gog himself, God's setting a war against Gog himself. Why would he pick, he didn't see him do it against Hitler himself, right. But Gog himself, and he makes it very clear, as if like we know who Gog was. He mentioned in the Septuagint, we see this God, that didn't happen. God relented from that prophecy in Amos 7. He relented, he said he was going to do this, and they asked him not to, so God said, okay, I won't do it. Then again, the same Gog, obviously in Amos, there was a demon thing there, and this is, now he's surfacing again. We'll also see Gog again in Revelation, because Gog and Magog in Revelation is not the same Gog and Magog. Very interesting, huh? Okay, just so you know, it kind of gives you an idea, you know what I mean? It's kind of worth throwing out there. I don't know if you understand kind of what I was trying to say there. All right. What did I do with my other paper here? Yeah. Okay, now I'll go back in Ezekiel.
38.
Okay, prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I'm against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields. And that funny sounds just like what we just read in Revelation. Okay? So it tells you this leader is definitely kind of like the same leader we saw there in Revelation. It's definitely demonic. It could be the same general that Satan's using, okay, through this man. Very interesting, huh? Now you notice he says, I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaw. So, two things that's telling you, that's the sovereignty of God. Okay, that God decides he's going to, that this Gog and Magog, they were obviously, if he turns them around, they're off doing something else maybe. It's very possible they weren't just picking a war to start with Israel. They're off going into a war. So this is the Russian leader going to war maybe against Europe or whoever knows. And God says, he puts a hook in their mouth, says, no, this isn't what you're going to do. I'm going to use you, this demon, for my purpose. Right. Okay? So it's the sovereignty of the Lord. That's what it means. Only one other time really in the Bible we ever see that. And that's with Pharaoh, when he hardens his heart. Okay, that God uses the man for his purpose. See, that's the whole point. That's another reason when you look at Gog as a demon, because he's the one, even the demons, he gives them the key, he tells them, he's the one who releases them. They can't do anything without God's permission. Now I release you. Okay, to do, see? So the same thing, even this Gog, who's out there, God says, now I'm going to use you for my purpose. All right? Very, very interesting, all right? In your jaws and bring you out with your whole army and your horses and your horsemen. Now the word horses there also means, here's this very interesting when we look at horse, it means swallow, swift, or leap with joy. So you got to remember, you got to remember, he's trying to give you a vision, what he's seeing. So what does that sound like? Swallow, something swift and it leaps. He's talking about leaping for joy. A tank, very possible. What he's seeing in the future, this is a future thing. He's talking about their horses, tanks. We're going to see when you look at it, you can see when we look at this, you can see him talking about. Very interesting. It's not when you look at this, when you look at the translation, Hebrew, it doesn't talk about a horse like an animal horse. It talks about something, a swallow, swift, leap for joy. The root word goes for leap for joy. Okay? Pretty interesting, huh? So, I mean,
how does that describe a tank?
well, he's trying to describe something.
No, he's not,
You gotta remember, he doesn't know what a tank was.
Have you
So,
ever seen
then that kind
goes
of,
to the desert?
Yes.
It looks like it's kind of leaping through
Yeah,
the.
yeah, right.
Also, it could be like an assault Humvee.
right, 'cause in your jaws you bring out,
They all just kind
it
of.
says in your jaws and bring you out with your whole army, your horses. See what I'm talking about? Your horsemen fully armed. Okay, you gotta think about it. In our day, they're not gonna be fighting the horses.
Right.
Even though I've heard
This is,
some.
this is the best way to describe it.
Right. Okay, then your whole army and their horses, fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields. It's not like they have shields. And then brandishing their swords, Persia, Cush, and Put, and with them all the shields and helmets. Also Gomar with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah. And from the far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. And verse 7, get ready, be prepared, you and all your hordes, gather about you, take command of them. After many days you will be called to arms. So what he's talking about there, in future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war. So what he's referring to is later days. He's talking about end days. Okay, that's not now. In the later, this is a prophecy. In later days, this Gog and Magog, he's talking about Gog. So he's talking something specifically, and that's what's interesting. So he's telling Gog, I'm going to go against you. So God's like, it's like he's telling Gog, this demon personally.
God is telling.
Right,
God.
this is right. He's telling Gog. Okay, you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
See, get ready, be prepared, you and all your hearts, gather about you, and take command that after many days you will be called to arms. It's almost like he's talking to him personally. In future years, you will. He's telling this is what you're going to be doing. Pretty interesting, huh? You will invade a land, okay, that has recovered from war, whose people was gathered from many nations.
Israel.
From the mountains of Israel, which long been desolate. So he's talking about this is in the future. This is what you're going to do, and I'm going to go against you. You will be doing this. I'm going to take you and turn you around. He's telling this God, whoever he is, what you're going to do. You're going to be leading these people. See what I'm talking about? So he's prophesying too. Pretty interesting, huh? They that have been brought out of the nations, and now all of them live in safety. We talked about that. In order for them to live in safety, what were some of the conditions of that?
Well, number one is they had to claim their land back again.
Well, but how would that would have happened? We know they're not living in safety now.
Right, but they hadn't claimed their
Right. So all these people who went up against them, they obviously took them out. That's what they were see, right? So we know. So now that makes sense that they're living in safety.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Verse 9, you and all your troops and many nations with you will go up advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. Verse 10, this is what the sovereign Lord says. On that day, thoughts will come into your mind and you will devise an evil scheme. So God, this is God. Okay? You will say, I will invade a land of unwalled villages. I will attack a peaceful and unsuspecting people. That right there, they're unsuspecting. So this tells you it can't be, this is one reason we know that the Psalm 83 war and all this, not the same war, or God, because they're unsuspecting. They're very suspecting right now.
Oh, very.
Right? So there's defense. If I'm suspecting, I would think there's no reason, there's no way they're going to be able to attack me.
Yeah.
So I become unsuspecting, right? And not only that tells me that Gog himself, who's still going to be in power, is off doing something else. They're not even,
Focused on it.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
It kind of actually sounds like Syria now. Like he attacked his own people out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, I've been watching the news on him and everything. He's worried about his own business. Someone actually hacked his email. He's worried about iTunes and everything. He's buying iTunes, music notes, everything through Netflix. He's not even paying attention to what he's doing.
Wow. I didn't hear about
Because he's
that.
downloading.
Yeah, they found like he's emailing his wife about getting the Harry Potter books. I'm being serious.
It's like his mind isn't even where it
Who are you
should
talking
be.
about, the leader of Syria?
Yeah,
Let's go a little bit beyond that.
yeah, you know what I mean. But I mean, like, I'm just putting that out there. I'm like,
Okay, it says, and I will attack the peaceful and unsuspecting people, all of them living without walls and without gates and bars. I will plunder and loot and turn my hand against the restless, the resettled ruins, and the people gathered from the nations, rich in livestock and goods, living in the center of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish and all our villages will say, you have come to plunder? Have you gathered your horse and loot to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods and seize much plunder? So there's going to be those who sit back and don't do anything about it. They're going to come, this big invasion is going to come against, and there's like, and that's the reference to Dedan and them is Saudi Arabia, okay? It's probably most the European, like England, that's Tarshish, and all those areas, Spain.
So they would come for Israel?
No, they're not going to. They're going to sit back and watch them doing that and not even help out. And say, oh, look what you're doing. You're going to go do that to them after what they just went through, but not be supportive to them. Right. Some believe that in the King James Version, it also refers to a young lion.
Yes.
What some people believe us, but there's no indication of that. And in the oldest version, it doesn't say young lion to begin with. Young lion can also probably refer to being Tarshish, England. But a lot of people believe it's talking about us too, you know.
Was that because Israel stands alone in the end? Nobody backs Israel.
I back Israel.
And that's exactly it.
So
Exactly it, right.
Yeah.
It could be, okay. And remember, there's a lot of other, it's not just these countries, there's a lot in many other nations. It says many others. So,
China.
one thing, no, I don't think at this point, that's not China.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that would be more when we're going to Armageddon.
Oh, okay.
All right, many other nations. It's going to be all you Islamic nations. Okay? Notice again, these are all Islamic. Okay? These are all, because remember, more than likely at this time, okay, what's going on, since that happened, now they're able to start rebuilding their temple too.
Right.
Okay?
That's what it's all about, right.
That, okay, that's part of what we'll see. Okay? So not only are they going to come for their loot, of course they're going to be up in arms about the Mount Temple. This ain't going to happen. They've already tried to wipe them out. Now it's a different, because you got to remember, it's not Iran and them who are coming. They're just joining in with Russia because Gog is the leader of that.
Right.
See my point? The leader of Gog, even though they're all Russian, about 60 million Muslims, they're coming after the loot and stuff. They're not coming after because destroy the sole purpose of Iran is right now to get rid of them.
Right.
See my point? Even though when the others join in with them, their purpose is we want to get rid of Israel because of religious reasons. Okay? So two different purposes. All right? Verse 14, therefore, son of man, prophesy, therefore, son of man, prophesy and say to God, this is what the sovereign Lord says, in that day when my people of Israel are living in safety, will you not take notice of it? You will come from a far place in the far north, and many nations with you, and on them riding on horses, a great horde of mighty armies. Now, he says the far north, from here we're talking about here, this is why we know when you go far north in Russia. Some people believe it's only this part right here in Russia, the lower part. Okay, and that's part of it. But when it says the furthest Russia goes all the way up, that's why some people say Moscow. Okay, as far as even as Moscow. So, right. All right, so that's what they believe. So that's why we know it's very clear. It's very clear who Magog is. Okay, and we know, and Rosh being the leader, is very clear that it's Russia. Okay, there's no doubt about it. Nobody has any disagreement on that. Okay, you will advance against my people of Israel like a cloud that covers the land. Then day, O Gog, I will bring you against my land. You notice I said that there? My land, so that the nations may know me when I show myself holy through you before their eyes. Okay, so I will bring you against my land. Okay, so the nations may know me. Now there's a different purpose for this war. Okay, this war, one thing, the other war in Psalm 83, Israel wiped them out, and this war, God wipes them out.
Yes.
That way that they'll know that God did it.
Right. They're going to know. This one is to make, it says right there, my land, so that the nations may know me when I show myself holy through you before their eyes. Okay? So this war, God wipes them out. The other one, Israel wipes them out. See the difference in the war?
That's a proven point, yeah.
Okay, 17. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Are you not the one I spoke of in former days by my servant, the prophet of Israel? So verse 17, he's saying that, in verse 17, he's saying that when this happens, Israel will know this is the war which prophesied about. There's not going to be any doubt that this is the war. So, in other words, this war goes on, they're not going to be going, was that the war he was talking, prophesied? No, it's going to be with that. Israel will know this is the war that was prophesied. It's not going to be a doubt that this is Gog and Magog. It's not going to be a question like, well, that might not have been that prophecy. That's what he's saying here. No, this is the war, and you'll know this is what was talked about here. There won't be any doubt on this prophecy being fulfilled.
So you also be line up with the Bible perfectly, but yeah, this is what it was talking about.
Yeah, this is going to be without a doubt. That's what it says. That this is what the Lord says. Are you the one I spoke of in former days by my servants, the prophets of Israel? That's what he's talking. At that time, the prophets prophesied for years that I would bring you against them. This is what will happen in that day. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my hot anger will be aroused, declares the sovereign Lord. In my zeal, my fury wrath, I declared that at that time there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people of the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. Now, one thing I want you to know is what he says here. When Gog attacks the land of Israel, my anger will arouse, in my zeal, fury, in the land of Israel. So it's mainly for the Israelis. Okay? And we're going to see that when we get 39. So this is mainly, okay, we see up here where he says, back in verse 16, I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me, and I will show myself holy. And here it's in reference to Israel itself, because Israel has a blinding on them, remember?
Right.
Okay, that's what this is all leading to.
So it's gonna remove the veil from them?
Yeah, we'll see. You're right. The mountains will be overturned, and the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on my mountains. You notice how he says, mine declares the Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. So he'll make everybody attack each other. So now this is what God's going to do. There'll just be confusion, and they'll just wipe each other out. That's all he's saying. I will execute judgment upon him with a plague of bloodshed. And you notice God's doing this one. Before it was Israel. It was God's victory. He allowed Israel to win it. But he let their armies do it. This time it says, I will do it. All right? So they're going to know it's God. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him and his troops and on the many nations. In verse 23, so I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Okay, right there it didn't say all nations. All right, many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. So these nations right here, when he's talking about many nations, remember, will know this is the act of God. Okay? Now, verse 39. Chapter 39. Ryan, go 1 through 8.
Son of man, prophesy against God and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, O God, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and drag you along. I will bring you from the far north and send you against the mountains of Israel. Then I will strike your bow from your left hand and make your arrows drop from your right hand. From the mountains of Israel you will fall, and all your troops and the nations with you. I will give you as food to all kinds of carrion birds and to the wild animals. You will fall in the open field, for I have spoken, declares the sovereign Lord. I will send fire on Magog and on those who live in safety in the coastlands, and they will know that I am the Lord. You said to what?
I'll just go through 8.
I will make known my holy name among my people Israel. I will no longer let my holy name be profaned, and the nations will know that I am the Lord, that I, the Lord, am the Holy One in Israel. It is coming. It will surely take place, declares the sovereign Lord. This is the day I have spoken of. Okay, remember, this is what's happening. Remember back when we were reading Genesis, and curse is what? Anybody who goes against Israel, I'm going to come against them. Yeah. And that's exactly, so what he's saying right here, this is the time that's coming. If you're going to go against Israel, you got to go through me to do it. That's basically what he's telling you right here. I am your protector. That's pretty horrifying. That's what he's saying. Yeah. So the problem when you're saying, why did we come out of Genesis? Some of these promises we saw in Genesis, we're going to be seeing fulfilled now, from way back then. So since the beginning of time. Yes. Right. The promise from Abraham, cursed, you know what I'm saying? He promised him that land. We're seeing that land will be restored partially here. Okay. Then we see anybody goes against this nation, okay, you're going to go through me. So now, what we're seeing now, that's just going to be a small part of it. Remember, they're a crippled nation. Now God says, I'll fight this. You say, how are they going to recover from that crippled nation? Because God's going to wipe people out. You're going to go against
You got to go against my people now? Watch what happens. And he makes it very clear back there. You'll know it's me, and you'll know this is the prophecy that was written in this word. There's not going to be any doubt about, like, well, maybe that wasn't that scripture. You'll know. Just like we know when Israel was reborn in 1948, it was prophesied, in Ezekiel. It's the exact same thing. There's not going to be a doubt that this is the prophecy.
It doesn't make much sense to me why everyone wants this little piece of land, dude.
Well, yeah. One thing is all about. Remember from the beginning, Ishmael, he hates his brothers.
Yeah.
Remember, God prophesied to him, "You will be right, and you'll hate your brothers." That's the way it is. It's the consequence of a sin from the beginning. Through that's what happens. All right, it's kind of. What did you read through, Ryan?
All the way from 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, verse 9.
9
Yeah, I'll start at 9. Then those who live in the towns of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up. The small and the large shields, the bows and the arrows and the war clubs and the spears. For 7 years they will use them for fuel. Now, this is very interesting
That's
right
the
here.
tribulation, isn't it?
Well,
Or is this a shadow of what's...
well, no. See, that's why a lot of people think this is coming from the trib. Now, a couple things you have to understand here. When he's referring to shields and stuff like that, and arrows, they didn't have those. So what's he referring to? Then those who live in the town of Israel will go out and use the weapons for fuel and burn them up, the small and the large shields and the bows and arrows, the war clubs and spears, for 7 years. Right.
Nuclear weapons.
So their weapons, there will be what? They'll be rebuilt into energy for them. Because remember, this war, right before this war, I believe we're gone. Okay? There'll be the peace treaty comes. That's when the Antichrist comes in.
Right.
This is where the 7-year tribulation. Why 7 years? Because that's all they're going to need. So now, think about this. The nuclear things that are going to go against their weapons will be converted, and we do this all the time. People say, right, energy for their heating. So now they're, think about this. They own all this, gold, silver, right, oil, and they're also energy.
Yeah.
Okay, they're energy. Think about that. See what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So through this whole 7 years, that's why he just says 7 years. So when we're thinking burning, we're thinking like there's going to be flames. He's referring to the energy for 7 years. This is why I believe it becomes, one reason we believe that this Gog and Magog becomes before the tribulation. Some think it's the second horse. It's the 7 years. Because when it would go into the millennial reign.
The burning one.
The burning one, and there's no need for the heating and fuel in the millennial reign. Where is that need for?
Right.
Okay, there's not. There's not going to be that need, okay? That's what I'm saying. So there's no...
So the 7-year tribulation, they're burning their weapons.
Right. So, but before this happens, before the tribulation happens, this war has been done. They're using these weapons, okay, which is now for their energy. Why? Because maybe a lot of their power, maybe because the war things got knocked out. Now, you know what I'm talking about? Like, everybody's looking for energy.
Okay, so that's the case then. All the nations that are watching Israel prosper and
Right.
all the stuff are fueling their anger against Israel, and they're all going to come against Israel at one time, and that will be the war of Armageddon.
Probably. Yeah, that's what I'm say. This isn't Armageddon either.
Wow.
This war isn't Armageddon. All
Because
right.
that's at the end of the 7 years.
That's another war.
That's the final war.
Right.
That's
Okay.
That's the one to end all wars.
Yeah.
So what we see definitely, when you look at this now, in the context of nowadays, you can see how that would be nuclear.
Yeah.
Okay, verse 10, they will not need to gather wood from the fields or cut it from the forest because they will use the weapons for fuel.
Right.
See, it's pretty obvious. When you're reading this even 100 years ago. What does that mean?
Yeah, how do you use
And think about that. If you're going to burn their, okay, one thing, most of our weapons are made out of metal nowadays.
Right.
See, doesn't he make, see what I'm saying? So you can see now it just totally makes sense. And don't forget, he's prophesying something in the future.
Right. You can't describe it.
You can't describe it. So these are the weapons, and they're fueling for what? What does that mean? They're going to have fires?
Right.
You know what I mean? No. He's talking about energy, converted to energy. That's what he's talking about. And they will plunder those who plunder them, and loot those who looted them, declares the sovereign Lord. So they're going to get more wealth. On that day I will give Gog a burial place in Israel, in the valley of those who travel east toward the sea. So a lot of people believe by the Dead Sea. And on that day I'll give Gog, isn't that something?
Yeah, it is.
Give Gog a burial. I'm not really sure exactly what that means. Is he putting back in the pit? What does that mean?
No, it says over here, it will block the way of travelers. Because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there.
Right.
So
but Gog being a demon.
But everyone's going to see what happens.
There's no doubt about it.
Graves.
Well, yeah, but see, God, that's very interesting. Now, you want to picture that. On that, but I want you to notice, on that day, I will give Gog a burial place in Israel.
I see.
Okay? Okay, I will. He doesn't say he'll be buried.
So
and you know, he specifies first Gog, I will give him, okay, whatever, and then most, there's a lot to that.
Right.
Okay? In the valley of those who travel east toward the sea, it will block the way of travelers because Gog and all his hordes will be buried there. So it will be called Valley of Gog. Okay? Now, this is where it gets very interesting. So what he's saying, there's going to be a big slaughter. All their armies are going to be annihilated. So the question you're asking earlier, Corey, when you look at it, we'll see up here more, is think about that. So in the first war, we had all those people wiped out. These are all Muslims. Now all these are wiped out. Is there any Muslims left?
Good question.
See? So basically all these, when we read here, see, most of them have been wiped out. Actually, if you read in the text in the Hebrew, it's like 5/6.
Wow. So almost all. There's a remnant of them left.
No way.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's what we're saying is that religion or whatever is put to rest.
Could it be because we all see that they're beheaded? So or the religion the new religion that's going to be whatever it is that just a sect of that?
Right.
Because at this point here, it looks like to me most of the Muslims have been wiped out.
Or could the Antichrist, come through them again and then revive their religion?
Well, this isn't the Antichrist. Don't get this.
No. But I'm saying like.
Could he
further
carry
on,
that
yeah,
through?
I mean, because
Well, you don't know that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Could it possibly be something like that? Or?
No, I don't think so.
There's something new.
Yeah.
But
Because it calls it mystery.
But I think what this is saying though is that what happens is that the Muslims are annihilated, and the reason everyone's going to be blocked by it is because it's going to be a rememberable thing that Islam is dead.
Wow.
It could very well be. But then there's indications too. We see that those have been in tribulation have been beheaded. Very clearly in the Quran, that's what they do. But is it the same form? What would be the next stage? Because right away we see when you get in Revelation, right away there's martyred saints who've been beheaded for their faith.
But it does call it a mystery, right?
Right.
And everything in the Bible that's a mystery, it's completely not what anybody thinks that it.
Exactly.
That's true.
So it could be a part of that. But see, these are things we don't. What I'm saying. I think in Daniel says seal it up till the time of the end. So there's things that just like now we don't know until it's revealed. We can kind of guess.
This new religion is not going to even be here until that's.
It could be. My point is, it could be. And a lot of people believe completely Islamic, what's going to go through tribulation. But you can see right here. Okay. But another thing we have to think too. It's only those countries.
Right.
You got to remember, we don't know.
It's still Europe and.
Yeah, but still.
Russia has
Right.
a population of
Right.
well.
Well, Russia's going to be wiped out.
Yeah, but I'm
See,
Europe and all that.
you got to think all that right there. Every one of them. In the first war got taken out, and now they're all taken out.
Oh man.
See?
Israel did all that for it. God and Israel.
Well, right. See my point?
Dude, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty mind blowing. So now watch. Now watch this, verse 14. Men will okay, well, for verse 12, we didn't get there. For 7 months, the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. Okay, now I want you to think about this. We already had nuclear weapons. Now watch about this. All the people of the land will bury them, and the day I am glorified will be a memorable day for them, declares the sovereign Lord. Verse 14. Men will be regularly employed to cleanse the land. So they will hire professionals. Why? But why? Some will go throughout the land in addition to them. Others will bury those that maintain the ground. Decontamination from what?
From nuclear energy.
Right. Why would you hire professionals? They're cleansing. A lot of people interpret it because the way Israel, because of their death. Okay, but we're talking about modern days. They don't follow the old. Right.
It's called deacidification, actually.
Right. So now you kind of see now think of this on the terms that we have nowadays. So for 7 months, the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land will bury them, and the day I am glorified will be a memorable day for them, declares the Lord. Men will regularly regularly employed to cleanse the land. Some will go throughout the land. In addition to them, others will bury them that remain on the ground. So there can be some cleansing the land, and some will do what? Then that contamination, radiation. At the end of the 7 months, they will begin their search. So after the 7 months, as they go through the land, and one of them sees a human bone, he will set a marker beside it until the grave diggers have buried it in the valley of Haman, Gog, also a town called Haman. Where there will be, and so they will cleanse the land. See now, when you read this before, when you look at the cleansing, we're thinking the old Levitical laws and their death burial, what they had to do that. That's not what it's referring to. Right. Why would you have to cleanse the land? And why would you have to hire people to bury because you're so rich, I just don't want to do the work? See?
No,
There's so many.
Right. Radiation, stuff like that.
Let's take you know what's funny is that stays.
Because you start thinking about this. I was thinking about it. Well, why would it take 7 months? Our bulldozers nowadays, you just go out and they bulldoze in a big grave like they did. No, there's a reason.
People walking through and doing
Yes. Okay. It tells you one thing. It tells you, but there's a reason why. Because it's decontamination. You can't just do that because they had to do it a proper way. And you notice they're going to do it by the Dead Sea area. There's an area where they decontaminate it with these people.
Right. Not just that. Where in Asia did they just have their nuclear? The Philippines. No, where was it that they had the tsunami?
Japan.
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 No,
Remember-
Japan.
Remember when the nuclear things got destroyed and
Yeah.
they couldn't, nobody could even go
Right.
there for
Still
months?
Right.
like that. It's still like that.
Yeah, but then they would send somebody in that would volunteer.
Right.
But
And if they die, it would be like, oh, not safe anymore.
Yeah.
But nuclear radiation stays for 500 years.
Yeah.
oh wow,
You can't go there or you get poisoned by it.
oh wow, unless you're.
So we see them, they start for 7 months and there's another 7 months. So it's really actually 14 months if you look at this.
Oh.
Because look, first is there's 7 months and there's another 7 months that they do it.
That's brutal.
Okay?
Wow.
Okay? So you think about that, okay? So pretty interesting. Verse 17, Son of man, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Call out to every kind of bird and all the wild animals, assemble and come together from all around the sacrifice I am preparing for you, the great sacrifice on the mountain of Israel. There you will eat flesh and drink blood. You will eat the flesh of the mighty men and drink the blood of the princes of the earth, if they were, as if they were rams and lambs, goats and bulls. All of them fattened animals from Bashan. At the sacrifice I'm preparing for you, you will eat fat till you are glutted and drink blood till you are drunk.
Hardly wait.
Wow, dude.
At my table, you will eat your fill of horses and riders, mighty men and soldiers of every kind, declares the Lord. Now, who's doing this? The birds and stuff.
Oh,
Okay, so he's saying, but you know, another thing I thought about that. Now, what does that seem so important about? Now, think about this. If they had to cleanse the land and you had birds doing that, that tells me that your animals now are contaminated.
Now there's going to be starvation.
See now the animals, if they're eating people, radiated people,
That's going to spread.
right?
And also, especially like you said, by the Dead Sea, which means that this gets spread to the ocean.
Yeah.
And it's infect the waters as well.
Well, I think that's actually kind of blocked off on now that. Verse 21. Says, I will display my glory among the nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflicted and the hand I lay upon them. From that day forward, the house of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God. Okay, so from this point on right here, this is where we see, when Israel, it was definitely, this is what I'm saying.
The veil is lifted from their eyes.
Exactly. We're talking about in Romans 11:25, the days of the fullness of the Gentiles. They will again bring in the old covenant. Where they left off 2,000 years ago, they'll bring back, and this is why you think about why would they're going to bring back the temple. God will allow that. That's not how they get salvation even then. But they'll pick up back where they left off when they didn't accept Christ as Messiah. But they'll acknowledge him again. So this is exactly what's happening. Israel will again recognize he is the God that, okay, this will start drawing them. You gotta remember, it's only been a partial amount of Israel. They'll see this, all of Israel. So now all of the Israelis, from people from all over the world, will know, and they'll start going back. They'll be drawn back to the old covenant, and back to the temple worshiping, and back to God's people.
So all it took for the Israelites to accept Christ as a Savior is a giant nuclear war.
Well, they're gonna.
Well,
Well, it's more than that. No, it wasn't more than a nuclear war. They know that it was God who did it.
Right.
That's
And they'll realize that, think about it, I'm God's chosen people, and the whole world's going to know that, my God, I am the chosen people. Think how privileged you feel.
Right.
You start drawing back to that
So everyone
land.
goes back to their homeland.
Now, because we only have a partial.
Yeah.
So it took Jesus coming down again and saying, hey, I'm Jesus Christ. Put his snacks and say, Jesus Christ leading right now. That was
Huh? Okay. We're almost done.
Okay.
From that day forward, the house of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God, and the nations will know that the people of Israel went into exile for their sins because they were unfaithful to me. So I hid my face from them and handed them over to their enemies, and they all fell by the sword. I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their offenses, and I hid my face from them. Verse 25, therefore this is what the sovereign Lord says, I will now bring Jacob back from captivity, and will have compassion on all the people of Israel, and I will be zealous for my holy name. They will forget their shame and all the unfaithfulness they showed towards me when they lived in safety in their land with no one to make them afraid. When I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them from the countries and their enemies, I will show myself holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. Though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own and not leaving any behind. What he's referring to is kind of like a stage right here. He starts out there, Israel will be drawn back, they'll be regathered, and people will know this is the nation because of what they did, because they never obeyed me. I'm the one that scattered them out, and they're coming back, and now they're coming back in. So the first part, the temple, this is happening, and after tribulation, he says, I will pour my spirit out upon them. They're going to start again, just like they left off to, and by the end of the tribulation, they will recognize that Christ is Savior. And that's what it's referring to here. He starts off there in 21, I will display my glory among nations, and all the nations will see the punishment I inflicted on them. Verse 22, from that day forward, the house of Israel will know that I am the Lord their God. All right, so they will know there. They'll start the old covenant again. They'll bring in the temple. But when it comes down later on, okay, verse 27, when I have brought them back from the nations and have gathered them, see, because of that, they'll come back to the nations. That's what it's referring to. All the people from all the other around the world are going to come back. I will show myself holy through them in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God. For though I sent them into exile among the nations, I will gather them to their own land, not leaving any behind. I will no longer hide my face from them. For them I will pour out my spirit in the house of Israel. So it's showing, because of this, all because starting at this point, this is why it's very obvious that we can see that this is because the time of Jacob's trouble will start at that point right there in Israel. They'll set their temple up again. That's why we see, why would they have a temple? Because all Israel's going to start doing temple sacrificing again, okay? It'll be cut off in the middle, we know by the Antichrist, the sacrifice. But they will recognize by the end of the trip, not the beginning though. Right. Now, even though we know some, because the 144,000 we know that come probably from the two. This is, you got to remember, at that time, and it gets into more. At that time, then the other two witnesses would have showed up. Okay, then there'll be 144,000 that are bringing Israel under the old covenant, that this is the Messiah. But they still won't recognize it. Some of them will, some obviously. We know that because they'll die for their faith. But by the time, at the end, he'll pour out his spirit upon all the nation of Israel. So when you kind of read it in that context, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, even from what we're seeing now, it's pretty obvious. What we're looking at is we're getting to the very last of it, okay? I could go through some other things. We don't have time right now, but it's definitely, I believe this all happens before the rapture, okay? There's no doubt about it if you go through studies about this, all happens before the rapture. I don't believe this is the second, the red horse and the tribulation.
The war or whatever?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The four horsemen?
Right. It's not one of those. That's war on the whole world. This isn't about the whole world. This is pinpointed on Israel for one. Okay. There's many reasons why it's not the, you know.
What's the precursor to everything? It's something that kind of kicks it all off, right?
The Psalm 83 war.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, let's get something straight. Here's what we have to. We're assuming what we're seeing going now is very possibly the Psalm 83. I'm not saying this is Psalm 83 war.
Right.
I don't know for
It
sure.
looks like it so
You know what I mean? I mean, what's going on is very much looking like, you know, it's very possible what we're seeing going on is definitely leading up to.
It's like everything's lining up.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's definitely very possible. What we're seeing going on totally is like, this totally makes sense. When you put this in account to what we're seeing going on through Psalms 83, Isaiah 17, Jeremiah chapter 49, now, and then leading to Gog and Magog. Now, I don't know, like I said, if there's a big span between the two or if they directly go right in. I don't think there's a big span in between. I don't think so. Between this war, if this happens, we're talking about Gog and Magog. Because one reason why would God fight the war for Israel? One reason why. Why would he?
Prove that he's God.
Well, they've already been wiped. Think about it. They've been crippled pretty big. Okay, they've been having some big destruction already happened to them.
Because
So their armies are probably already down.
Right, yeah, because they're not built back up.
Right.
In other words, there would be no other way for Israel to win except if God came
Right.
down and did for him.
Right.
Yeah, that really is, it's an interesting.
You know what I'm talking
thing,
about?
because isn't that just how God does things, how he allows something like that to get
Right.
Israel to be crippled to show his power and his glory.
Yeah.
And yeah, wow, very cool.
I'll cite that final statement in 29. It says, and they will know that, about whatever it's in, like that.